They say a woman abandoned at the altar never truly recovers, that the shame follows her like a shadow, darkening every room she enters. They whispered it about Lillian Hawke for years, poor thing, left standing there while the whole county watched. But here's what they didn't know. Shame only destroys you if you let it. And Lillian? She let it forge her into something else entirely. Something harder. Something dangerous. This is the story of a woman who turned humiliation into armor, survival into art, and eventually, against every instinct screaming at her to run, gambled everything on the one man who refused to look away. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The chapel smelled like dying flowers and bad decisions. Lillian noticed that first, before the whispers started, before her mother's hand went cold in hers, before the world tilted sideways and refused to right itself. White roses lined every pew, their petals already browning at the edges despite the early hour. Someone had chosen them weeks ago, probably her, back when she still believed in things like forever and meant it. Now they just smelled rotten. She stood at the altar in a dress that cost more than most families earned in a year, ivory silk that caught the morning light streaming through stained glass windows. Her veil, imported lace, 3 generations old, her grandmother's pride, hung heavy against her face. Through it, the world looked softer, blurred, almost kind. That should have been her first warning. "He'll be here," her mother whispered beside her, fingers digging into Lillian's palm, hard enough to bruise. "Traffic from the estate, that's all. You know how the roads get after rain." There hadn't been rain in a week. Lillian didn't answer, couldn't really. Her throat had closed up somewhere around the 10th minute of standing there, waiting, while 200 guests watched from the pews like spectators at a hanging. She could feel their eyes, could hear the whispers starting to build like a wave gathering strength before it crashes. The priest shifted his weight. Once, twice. His prayer book remained closed. 15 minutes became 20. 20 became 30. Her father appeared at her elbow, moving with the careful precision of a man trying not to spook a wild animal. "Lillian, sweetheart, don't." The word came out harder than she intended. Sharp enough that he actually stepped back. "We should perhaps—" I said don't. Because the moment she acknowledged it, the moment she turned around and faced those 200 pairs of eyes, it became real, final. The thing that would define her for the rest of her life. Not Lillian Hawke, daughter of the county's most respected magistrate. Not Lillian Hawke, who spoke 3 languages and managed her father's correspondence better than his clerk. Not even Lillian Hawke, whose dowry had made her the catch of the season. Just Lillian Hawke, the girl left standing at the altar, the girl nobody wanted. Her mother made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. "He's not coming." "Martha," her father started. "He's not coming." Her mother's voice cracked like river ice in spring. "Oh God, everyone's watching, everyone knows." "Then let them watch." Lillian heard herself say it, heard her own voice, calm and cold, coming from somewhere outside her body. She turned slowly, carefully, the way you move when you're made of glass and one wrong step will shatter everything. The veil made it easier somehow. Let her see them all without meeting anyone's eyes directly. Lady Pemberton in the 3rd row, hand pressed to her mouth, eyes wide with what might have been shock or might have been delight. It was always so hard to tell with her. The Morrison sisters, whispering behind their gloves, probably already composing the letters they'd send to friends in London before the day was out. Old Mr. Fletcher, who'd known Lillian since she was 6 years old, staring at his shoes like they were the most fascinating things he'd ever seen. And in the back, half hidden behind a marble column, her breath caught. Catherine Walsh, the seamstress's daughter, pretty in a quiet, unremarkable way, wearing a dress Lillian had never seen before, green silk that must have cost a fortune. Standing beside an empty seat. No. Understanding hit like a fist to the stomach. "Lillian," her father tried again. She walked, not running, not stumbling, walking with her chin up and her shoulders back, the way her governess had drilled into her for 18 years. One foot in front of the other. Don't look down. Don't look back. Don't let them see you break. The aisles stretched forever, Whispers rose around her like water filling a sinking ship. She caught fragments. Knew something was wrong. That Walsh girl? Absolutely humiliating. Her heel caught on the hem of her dress. She felt the fabric tear, kept walking. Someone had left roses scattered on the aisle, white petals against dark wood. Her shoes crushed them. She felt something wet seep through the silk. When she looked down, red stained her gloves. Not roses, then. Someone had mixed red ones in with the white. How poetic. The chapel doors stood open ahead of her, sunshine beyond them, brutally bright after the dimness inside. She could see the carriages waiting, see the footmen who'd been hired for the celebration afterward, the celebration that wouldn't happen now. See the street beyond, where regular people were going about their regular lives, completely unaware that hers had just ended. She made it 3 steps outside before her mother caught up. "Lillian, please, just wait." For what? She turned, and the veil finally slipped, fell away completely, leaving her face bare to the autumn air, to everyone still pouring out of the chapel behind them. "What exactly should I wait for, Mother?" Martha Hawke looked 10 years older than she had an hour ago. Her carefully arranged hair was coming loose. Tears cut tracks through her powder. "We'll fix this. Your father will speak to the Ashfords. We'll find out what happened." "I know what happened." Lillian's voice sounded strange to her own ears. Flat. Empty. Thomas fell in love with someone else. Someone prettier, probably. Or younger. Or less difficult. Does it matter which? "Don't say that." "Why not? Everyone else will." She was right. They both knew it. In a week, maybe less, the story would be in every parlor from here to London. Thomas Ashford, 3rd son of a viscount, running off with the pretty seamstress while his bride waited at the altar. There'd be variations, of course. Some would say Lillian drove him to it with her sharp tongue. Others would blame her family, too ambitious, reaching above their station. A few might even pity her. She'd hate the pity most. "We'll go home," her father said, appearing beside them with his coat already on, moving with the kind of grim efficiency that meant he was planning, strategizing. "Martha, take her to the carriage. I'll handle the guests." "Handle them how?" Lillian's laugh scraped her throat raw. "Tell them it's all a misunderstanding, that Thomas is just running late?" "I'll tell them the truth." His jaw set hard. "That he's a coward who wasn't worthy of you, that this family doesn't beg, and that anyone who treats this as entertainment will find themselves unwelcome in our home." It was a nice speech. Might even work on some of them. But they all knew what really mattered wasn't what her father said today. It was what people would say tomorrow, next week, next year. The abandoned bride. That's what she'd always be now. The carriage ride home took 20 minutes. Lillian spent it staring out the window, watching the familiar streets roll past. The bakery where she'd bought cream buns as a child. The park where she'd learned to ride. The assembly hall where she'd danced at her first ball, so nervous she'd nearly tripped over her own feet. All of it looked the same, only she had changed. Her mother cried quietly in the corner. Her father sat rigid, staring at nothing, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Nobody spoke. What was there to say? Home appeared ahead, the limestone manor that had housed Hawkes for 3 generations, its windows glowing warm in the morning sun. The gardens her mother had spent years perfecting. The stables where Lillian had learned to ride before she could read. She'd left this house 4 hours ago as a bride. She returned as a cautionary tale. The servants had already heard. Of course they had. Someone always talked, and gossip traveled faster than any carriage. They lined up in the hall as required, but their eyes held something between sympathy and curiosity. Watching to see if she'd break. If she'd scream or cry or collapse in a convenient heap. Lillian walked past them all without a word, made it to her room, closed the door, locked it. Then finally, she let herself look at the mirror. The girl staring back looked like a stranger. Hair still perfect despite everything, pinned with pearls that had belonged to her grandmother. Face pale but composed. Dress torn at the hem, roses and blood staining the silk. She looked like something out of a painting. The tragic heroine. The wronged maiden. She looked pathetic. Lillian grabbed the nearest thing, a hairbrush, silver-backed, monogrammed, and threw it at the mirror as hard as she could. Glass exploded. Then, and only then, did she start to laugh. The thing about public humiliation is that people expect you to hide from it. Lillian discovered this 3 days later when she walked into the village market like nothing had happened. The silence fell in waves, spreading out from where she stood until the whole square had gone quiet. Vendors stopped their calls. Shoppers froze mid-transaction. Even the dogs seemed to pause. She dressed carefully that morning. Not in mourning black, that would imply she'd lost something worth grieving. Instead, a deep burgundy day dress, simple but well cut, with her hair pinned severe and high. War paint, her governess used to call it. The armor you wore when facing battle. "Good morning, Mrs. Fletcher," she said to the butcher's wife, her voice carrying clear across the square. "I'll need a roast for Sunday. Something nice. We're having guests." They weren't. But Mrs. Fletcher didn't know that. The woman's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Of course, Miss Hawke, right away." And just like that, the spell broke. People remembered how to move, how to speak, how to pretend they hadn't just been staring at the abandoned bride like she was an exotic animal in a menagerie. Lillian spent an hour shopping, bought things she didn't need, made pleasant conversation with people whose eyes kept sliding away from hers, smiled until her face hurt. By the time she returned home, her mother was in hysterics. "You can't just parade around like nothing happened." Martha paced the drawing room, wringing her hands. "People are talking." "People are always talking." Lillian set her parcels down. "I'm simply giving them something accurate to talk about." "This isn't funny, Lillian." "I'm not laughing." She hadn't laughed since that first night, when something in her chest had cracked open and let out all the bitterness she'd been swallowing for 18 years. The need to be perfect, to be pleasing, to be the daughter everyone expected and the wife someone might want. All that effort, and still... No, she wouldn't think about that. Her father appeared in the doorway. "Martha, give us a moment." "Richard, you can't possibly think..." "Now, please." Her mother left in a rustle of skirts and wounded dignity. Lillian waited. "You're scaring her," her father said quietly. "I'm scaring myself." "Good." He crossed to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Fear means you're paying attention, that you understand the situation." "Oh, I understand." Lillian's laugh was bitter. "I'm ruined, socially dead. No decent man will have me now, not after this. I'll be the spinster aunt who comes to family gatherings and makes everyone uncomfortable. The cautionary tale mothers tell their daughters. Is that what you think? Isn't it true?" He turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes that looked like respect. "Only if you accept it. Only if you let them write your ending." "They already have." "Then write a new one." He moved closer, and his voice dropped. "You're my daughter, Lillian. You have my mind and your mother's spine, and neither of those things disappeared just because some boy got cold feet. You want to survive this? Then survive it, but on your terms, not theirs." Something in her chest, that broken place, shifted slightly. "How?" "Show them you don't need saving. Be so competent, so useful, so undeniably valuable that they have to respect you whether they pity you or not." He smiled grimly. "The estate accounts are a mess. The tenants need management. Half the contracts need renegotiating. Your mother's charity work is drowning in paperwork. I'm offering you a choice. Hide in your room and prove them all right about ruined women, or get to work and prove them wrong." Lillian stared at him. "You want me to... what? Become your clerk?" "I want you to become indispensable." Turned out, running an estate was harder than it looked. Also more interesting, Lillian discovered she had a knack for numbers. They made sense in a way people never quite did. Ledgers didn't lie. Accounts either balanced or they didn't. There was a clean simplicity to it that she found almost soothing. The tenants were another matter. "Absolutely not," she told Mr. Davies, who'd come to renegotiate his lease for the 3rd time that month. "The rent is fair, and you know it. Your yield was up 20% last harvest." "But with the market being what it is..." "The market is fine. What's not fine is you trying to take advantage because you think I'm too soft-hearted to say no." She pushed the ledger across the desk. See these numbers? Your neighbors are paying the same rate and managing just fine. So either accept the terms, or I'll find someone who will. He left grumbling but signed. Her mother watched from the doorway. You're getting a reputation. For what? Being difficult? For being formidable. Martha's smile was small but genuine. Half the county's terrified of you now. Good. And it was good. Better than pity, anyway. Better than the whispered sympathies and the careful avoidance of certain topics. When people were afraid of you, they at least took you seriously. The months blurred together. Autumn became winter, became spring. The scandal gradually faded from immediate gossip to occasional reference. Thomas Ashford apparently married his seamstress in some quick, quiet ceremony in Scotland. Lillian heard about it third hand and felt nothing. Not anger, not grief, just a distant sense of relief that it was finally, officially, over. She was 20 years old and already finished with romance. That suited her fine. You can't hide here forever, her mother said one morning at breakfast. I'm not hiding, I'm working. You're avoiding society. Society avoided me first, Martha sighed. The Pembletons are having a ball next month. They've sent an invitation. Declined. Lillian, I said declined. She didn't look up from the estate reports. I have better things to do than stand in corners while people decide whether to pity me or judge me. What if someone worthwhile is there? Then they can find me here. They didn't, of course. Worthwhile men didn't go looking for ruined women with sharp tongues and reputations for being difficult. They married sweet girls who knew when to be quiet, girls who hadn't been publicly humiliated, girls who still believed in fairy tales. Lillian told herself she didn't care, told herself that right up until the morning her father came home with news. The Duke of Blackridge is coming to the county. Her mother dropped her teacup. It shattered against the floor in a spray of porcelain and Earl Grey. Rowan Blackridge? Martha's voice went up an octave. Here? Why? Business with the mining consortium. His holdings border ours to the north. Her father's expression stayed carefully neutral. He'll be staying at Ashton Hall for the season. Lord Pembleton is hosting him. Lillian barely listened. She'd heard of the Duke of Blackridge the way you heard of storms brewing off the coast, as something dangerous happening far away. War hero, they said. Brilliant strategist. Made his fortune in coal and steel, turned a bankrupt duchy into one of the wealthiest in England before he was 30. Also cold as January frost and twice as unforgiving. We'll need to extend an invitation, her mother was saying, already planning. A dinner, perhaps. Something intimate. If we could arrange an introduction. No. Both her parents looked at her. No? Her father repeated. I'm not performing for some duke. Lillian stood, gathering her papers. You want to have him for dinner? Fine. But don't expect me to simper and curtsy and act grateful for the attention. I have actual work to do. She left before they could argue. But later that night, alone in her room, she found herself thinking about it. About cold dukes and their even colder reputations. About men who looked at the world like a battlefield and treated every interaction as strategy. About how exhausting it would be to play those games. She'd been playing them her whole life, the dutiful daughter, the perfect bride-to-be. Look where that had gotten her. Standing at an altar, waiting for a man who never came. Waiting like an idiot while everyone watched. Never again. She'd rather be alone than make herself small for someone else's comfort. Rather be feared than pitied. Rather be called difficult than be called fool. The Duke of Blackridge could come or not come, could notice her or ignore her, could think whatever he wanted about the Hawke girl who got left at the altar. She had accounts to balance and tenants to manage, and a life to live that had nothing to do with men or marriage or second chances at things she didn't want anymore. That's what she told herself anyway. Told herself all the way up until 3 weeks later when she looked up from the estate ledgers and saw him standing in her father's study doorway, watching her with eyes like winter storms, calculating, cold, and far too perceptive for comfort. And something in her chest, that broken place she'd thought had healed, cracked open again. Different this time. Dangerous. Miss Hawke, he said, his voice dark gravel and controlled power. I've heard interesting things about you. Lillian met his gaze without flinching. None of them good, I'm sure. His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. On the contrary, they said you were formidable. They undersold it considerably. And just like that, the war began. The silence that followed his statement stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Lillian didn't break it. She'd learned in the past 2 years that silence made most people nervous enough to fill it with something stupid. Men, especially. They talked to cover the quiet, revealed more than they meant to, gave away their positions before the real negotiation even started. Rowan Blackridge didn't talk. He just stood there in the doorway, tall enough that he had to duck slightly under the frame, watching her with the kind of focused attention that made her skin prickle. His coat was dark wool, well cut but not showy. No unnecessary decoration, nothing to soften the hard angles of his face or the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, legacy of some war she hadn't bothered learning about. He looked like what he was, a weapon that had learned to wear gentlemen's clothes. Your father said I'd find you here. His voice hadn't changed. Still that low rasp that sounded like he didn't waste words on things that didn't matter. Working through the mining contracts. Did he also mention I don't enjoy interruptions? He did. I came anyway. The sheer audacity of it almost made her laugh. Almost. Then you're either very brave or very stupid, Your Grace. I haven't decided which. Rowan. He stepped into the study without invitation, moving with the kind of controlled economy she associated with predators. Nothing wasted, every motion deliberate. I don't use the title when I'm working, and stupid men don't usually survive 3 campaigns and a bankrupt inheritance. No, they just marry badly and die in debt. She set down her pen with more force than necessary. What do you want? To see the woman who renegotiated Lord Pembleton's water rights so thoroughly, he's still complaining about it 6 months later. He was stealing from the northern tenants. Someone had to stop him. Someone did. Rowan moved closer, his eyes dropping to the ledgers spread across her desk. You cost him nearly £8,000 a year in that deal. He calls you a menace. He's not wrong. No. His smile was a brief, sharp thing. He's not. Which is why I want to hire you. The words landed like stones in still water. Lillian actually felt her mouth open slightly before she caught herself. Excuse me? The Blackridge holdings need restructuring, new contracts, better terms, actual oversight, instead of whatever corrupt mess my predecessor left behind. He pulled a chair over without asking and sat across from her like they were equals. Like he did this every day. You're good with numbers, better with people, and you don't care about making friends? That makes you perfect. That makes me a woman. I noticed. Women don't manage ducal estates, Your Grace. Rowan. They manage households. Maybe a charity or two if they're very ambitious. They certainly don't negotiate mining contracts or handle tenant disputes, or you've been doing exactly that for 2 years. He leaned back, completely relaxed despite the fact that he'd just walked into a stranger's home and offered her a job no woman in England would ever be allowed to take. Your father's estate runs smoother now than it has in a generation. The tenants actually pay on time. The yield is up. Even your mother's charity work is properly funded for once. That's not luck. That's competence. Lillian stared at him. You investigated me. I investigate everyone I do business with. We're not doing business. Not yet. The presumption of it, the absolute certainty in his voice, sent heat crawling up her neck. Anger or something else she couldn't quite tell. I'm not interested in your charity, Your Grace. It's not charity, it's employment. He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket and slid it across the desk. That's what I'm offering. Double what your father pays you. Yes, I know he pays you now. He mentioned it. Plus living quarters at Blackridge Hall and full authority over the estate accounts. You'd report directly to me. Nobody else. She didn't touch the paper. Why? Why what? Why me? Why not hire a proper estate manager? Some man with credentials and connections who won't cause you endless social problems? Because proper estate managers steal, men with credentials forge documents, and I don't give a damn about social problems. He said it so flatly, so matter-of-fact, that she almost believed him. I care about results. You get results. I also have a reputation. For being difficult, I heard. He stood, moving to the window, his silhouette dark against the afternoon light. They said you were abandoned at the altar and turned bitter, that you drive men half mad with your sharp tongue and your complete lack of feminine charm, that you're unmarriageable and probably prefer it that way. Each word hit like a slap. Lillian felt her jaw tighten. And yet you're still here, still offering me a job. Either you're lying about not caring, or you're insane. Or I'm practical. He turned back to face her. Everything they say about you, the difficult parts, the sharp parts, the parts that scare away men looking for pretty ornaments, those are exactly the qualities I need. I don't want someone who'll smile and nod and steal from me behind my back. I want someone who'll tell me the truth even when it's ugly, someone who won't break under pressure. How do you know I won't break? Because you already didn't. His eyes, gray as winter fog, pinned her in place. They tried to break you 2 years ago, humiliated you in front of everyone you knew, and instead of hiding, you walked out of that chapel with your head up and built yourself into something they're all afraid of now. That's not breaking, that's winning. The words burrowed under her skin, found that broken place in her chest, and prodded it hard enough to hurt. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. He moved toward the door, then paused. Think about it. I'm at Ashton Hall for the next month. Send word when you decide. I've already decided. No. No? No. She stood, needing the height advantage, even if it was minimal. I'm not interested in being your social experiment or your proof that women can do men's work if you let them. Find someone else to rebuild your estate. Rowan studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, actually smiled, and it transformed his whole face into something almost human. You think that's what this is, isn't it? If I wanted an experiment, I'd hire my cousin's daughter. She's young, eager, properly grateful for the opportunity. He pulled his gloves on, each movement precise. I'm offering you this job because I think you'll be excellent at it, and because I'm tired of dealing with incompetent men who cost me money. Nothing experimental about that. Just business. He left before she could respond. Lillian stood there in the empty study, her heart beating too fast, staring at the paper he'd left on her desk. She didn't open it that day, or the next, but she didn't throw it away either. Her mother found out, of course. Mothers always did. The Duke of Blackridge offered you a position? Martha's voice climbed to heights that probably disturbed dogs 3 counties over. Working for him? Living at his estate? Lillian, have you lost your mind? I haven't accepted. You haven't declined. I'm considering it. There's nothing to consider. Her mother paced the drawing room, wringing her hands hard enough to leave marks. Unmarried women don't live at bachelor estates. They don't work as estate managers. They don't do any of this. Maybe they should. Martha stopped mid-pace. What? Maybe they should. Lillian set down her tea with careful control. Maybe unmarried women should do something useful instead of sitting in drawing rooms waiting to die of boredom. Maybe we should work and earn our own money and make our own decisions instead of what? Being respectable? I stopped being respectable 2 years ago. Remember? The silence that fell was different, heavier. Her mother sank into the nearest chair. Is that what you think? That you're ruined beyond saving? I think I'm realistic. Lillian's voice came out harder than she meant. No man of any standing will marry me now. You know it. Father knows it. The entire county knows it. So what exactly am I being respectable for? What's the point? The point is maintaining your dignity. I have maintained it. By working, by being useful, by proving I'm more than just some abandoned bride everyone pities. She leaned forward. This job, if I took it, would give me real independence, real authority, a chance to do something that actually matters. It would also ruin you completely. I'm already ruined, Mother. Might as well make it count for something. Martha's face crumpled. I just want you to be happy. Then let me do this. I can't. Tears spilled over, cutting tracks through powder. I can't watch you throw away every chance at a normal life because you're too angry to see past your own hurt. This isn't about anger. Yes, it is. You're angry at Thomas, angry at society, angry at everyone who looked at you wrong that day. And instead of letting it go, you're feeding it, turning it into armor. Her mother's voice broke. But armor doesn't keep you warm at night, Lillian. It just keeps everyone else out. The words hit harder than they should have, found all the soft places Lillian had tried to bury under work and competence and careful control. Maybe I prefer it that way. She left before her mother could see her cry. Her father had different concerns. It's unorthodox, he said that evening in his study, pouring them both whiskey despite the early hour. Highly unusual, probably scandalous. So that's a no. That's a qualified maybe. He handed her a glass. Blackridge came to see me this afternoon. Wanted my permission to formally offer you the position. Lillian nearly choked on her whiskey. He what? Asked my permission. Very proper about it, too. Her father's smile was grim. Said he understood the social implications. That he'd ensure your reputation was protected, your quarters were appropriate, your position was official. He even offered to hire a companion if you wanted one. I don't need a companion. I know. I told him that. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 48 years. I also told him that if he hurt you, I'd destroy him. Socially, financially, every way I could think of. Father, let me finish. His voice carried the weight of years spent managing difficult men in harder situations. Rowan Blackridge is not a kind man. He's brilliant, ruthless, and completely focused on results. He'll push you harder than anyone ever has. Expect more. Demand more. And if you fail, and everyone fails eventually, he won't be gentle about it. I'm not afraid of hard work. I know, but there's hard work and then there's what he's offering. This isn't managing our tenants or balancing household accounts. This is running a duchy. Millions of pounds in holdings, hundreds of people depending on decisions you'll make. And all of it while half of society calls you scandalous and the other half calls you worse. Lillian met his eyes. And you think I can't handle it. I think you're the only person I know who could. He drained his whiskey in one swallow. But I also think you need to ask yourself why you want to. Is it because this is genuinely what you want? Or is it because you're still trying to prove something to people who stopped mattering 2 years ago? The question hung between them. Does it matter? She asked finally. As long as the work gets done? It matters to me. I'm your father. I'm allowed to care whether you're happy or just surviving. Maybe surviving is enough. Maybe. He poured himself another drink. But I raised you to want more than enough. So don't take this job out of spite or pride or because you're afraid of what else might be waiting. Take it because you actually want it, because it challenges you, because it's yours. He left her alone with that thought and a half-full glass of whiskey. Lillian sat in the darkening study, watching shadows creep across the floor, and tried to figure out what she actually wanted. The honest answer terrified her. She sent word to Ashton Hall 3 days later. One line, written in her neatest hand. I accept. When do I start? Rowan's response arrived within hours. Tomorrow. Bring practical clothes and a thick skin. You'll need both. Her mother wept. Her father looked simultaneously proud and worried. The servants whispered. Lillian packed her things and didn't let herself think about what she was doing. Blackridge Hall sat 15 miles north, carved into the hillside like something out of a fever dream. Dark stone, sharp angles, windows that glowed amber in the dusk. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress. Appropriate, she thought as the carriage pulled up. Rowan met her at the door himself. No butler, no fanfare, just him in his shirt sleeves, ink on his hands, looking like he'd been working. You came. You offered a job. I accepted. She stepped down without waiting for help. Where do I start? His smile was brief. Follow me. He led her through halls lined with portraits of dead Blackridges, all of them looking vaguely disapproving, into a study that made her father's look like a closet. Ledgers everywhere, papers stacked in precarious towers, maps covering every available surface. This, Rowan said, gesturing at the chaos, is what my predecessor left me. 5 years of creative accounting, fraudulent contracts, and outright theft. I've been trying to untangle it alone. Now you're here. Lillian set down her bag and moved to the nearest desk, picked up a ledger, flipped through pages of numbers that didn't add up right. This is a disaster. Yes. Half these entries are clearly forged. I know. And you expect me to fix it. I expect you to help me fix it. He moved beside her, close enough that she could smell leather and smoke and something darker. I'm not hiring you to work for me, Lillian. I'm hiring you to work with me. Partners. Equals. She looked up at him. He was too close. She should step back. She didn't. Partners implies trust. We don't know each other. Then we'll learn. His eyes held hers. I need someone I can rely on. Someone who won't fold under pressure or sell me out for a better offer. You need, what? Independence? Purpose? Proof that you're more than what they say you are? All of it. None of it. She turned back to the ledger, needing the distance. I need to not be that girl at the altar anymore. I need to be someone else, someone stronger. You already are. You don't know that. I do. He reached past her, pulled another ledger from the stack. His arm brushed hers. Neither of them moved. 2 years ago, you could have hidden. Could have married the first man desperate enough to overlook your scandal. Could have spent your life being grateful someone wanted you despite everything. Instead, you chose this. Chose difficulty. Chose yourself. His voice dropped lower. That takes strength most people never find. The words wrapped around something in her chest and squeezed. Stop. Stop what? Stop saying things like that. Stop looking at me like I'm something more than I am. She pulled away, putting the desk between them. I'm not strong. I'm angry. There's a difference. Not much of one. There's everything of one. The words exploded out before she could stop them. Strong people choose. Angry people just burn everything down because they're too bitter to build anything new. I'm not here because I'm brave or independent or any of those things you keep implying. I'm here because I have nowhere else to go and nothing else to lose. That's not strength. That's survival. The silence after her outburst felt huge. Rowan didn't look away, didn't flinch, just watched her with those winter storm eyes until she wanted to scream. You think those are different, he said finally. Survival and strength. They're not. Of course they are. Survival is choosing to keep breathing when everything in you wants to stop. Strength is doing it day after day after day without breaking. He moved around the desk, slow and deliberate. You survived being humiliated, survived the gossip, survived 2 years of people treating you like a cautionary tale, and you did it without losing yourself. That's both. That's everything. You make it sound noble. It wasn't. It was just what? Stubborn, spiteful, refusing to give them the satisfaction of watching me collapse. Her laugh scraped her throat. That's not nobility. That's pettiness with good posture. Call it whatever you want. He was close again, too close, and she couldn't make herself step back. But you're here. You're standing. You're fighting. That's more than most people manage. Lillian stared up at him, at this man who looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving, and felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd been keeping carefully locked since that morning at the altar. Hope. Or maybe just the fear that hope existed. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Trust. Work with someone. Believe that... She cut herself off. Believe that what? That it won't all fall apart again. His expression shifted, softened into something almost human. It might. People fail. Plans collapse. Nothing's guaranteed. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be honest. He reached out slowly, gave her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her wrist. I can't promise this will work perfectly. Can't promise we won't fight, or that you won't want to quit, or that society won't make your life difficult. But I can promise I won't run. I'll show up every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The touch burned. She pulled away. Words are easy. Yes, which is why I'm going to prove it with actions. He stepped back, giving her space. Starting now. We have 6 months to clean up this mess before the shareholders' meeting. 6 months to prove the duchy isn't the disaster my predecessor made it. You want to see if I'm serious? If I'll actually treat you like an equal? Work with me. And if at any point I fail to live up to what I'm promising, walk away. No questions asked. 6 months. Half a year to test whether this impossible partnership could actually work. Half a year to see if she could trust again. The smart choice would be to refuse, to protect herself, to avoid the risk of being abandoned twice. Lillian had never been particularly smart about self-preservation. 6 months, she heard herself say, but I want everything in writing, salary, terms, authority, all of it. Done. And my own quarters, separate wing, no expectations beyond the work. Already arranged. And if anyone implies that this is anything other than professional employment, I walk. Immediately. Understood. He held out his hand. Partners? She looked at his hand, at his face, at the study full of chaos that would consume the next 6 months of her life, at the chance to be something more than the abandoned bride. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, completely steady. Partners. That night, alone in her new quarters, a suite that was bigger than her entire room at home, Lillian stood at the window and watched the moon rise over the estate. Acres of it, hundreds of tenants, thousands of pounds in contracts, all of it waiting for her to prove herself, or fail spectacularly. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and tried to ignore the voice in her head that sounded suspiciously like her mother. Armor doesn't keep you warm at night, it just keeps everyone else out. Maybe. But it also kept you safe, kept you from making the same mistakes twice, kept you from trusting too easily and believing too quickly and standing at altars waiting for men who never came. She'd take cold and safe over warm and destroyed any day. That's what she told herself anyway. Told herself all the way up until 3 weeks later, when Rowan found her crying over a contract in the early hours of morning and didn't say a word, just sat beside her in the darkness and waited until she could breathe again. And for the first time in 2 years, the armor felt less like protection and more like a cage she'd locked herself inside. She didn't mention it the next morning. Neither did he. They worked through breakfast in the study, Lillian cross-referencing mining contracts while Rowan drafted letters to shareholders who'd been conveniently ignoring their obligations for years. The silence between them felt different now, less hostile, more careful, like they were both pretending the night before hadn't happened. This one's embezzling. Lillian slid a ledger across the desk, pointing to a series of entries that made her head hurt. James Whitmore, your manager at the Northern Holdings. He's been skimming profits for at least 3 years, maybe longer. Rowan barely glanced up. Proof? 3 separate sets of books. One for you, one for the tax assessor, one hidden in his office that actually shows real numbers. He's not even trying to be subtle about it. She flipped to another page, anger making her movements sharp. He cost you nearly £20,000 last year alone. That got his attention. His pen stopped moving. 20,000. At minimum. Could be more if he's been at it longer. She met his eyes. You want me to handle it, or would you prefer to fire him yourself? You handle it. He returned to his letter, but something in his jaw had tightened. Recover what you can. Make an example. I want every manager from here to London knowing exactly what happens when they steal from me. The cold certainty in his voice should have bothered her. It didn't. Lillian spent the next week dismantling James Whitmore's career with surgical precision. She documented everything, built a case so airtight even his own lawyer advised him to settle, and recovered £17,000 before the man fled to Edinburgh with what was left of his dignity. Word spread fast. You're terrifying, Mrs. Carson, the housekeeper told her over tea. The older woman's tone suggested she meant it as a compliment. Half the staff thinks you're a witch. The other half thinks you're secretly working for the crown. I'm just doing my job. Dear, most people doing their jobs don't make grown men cry. She refilled Lillian's cup with a smile that showed too many teeth. Mr. Whitmore's replacement has been crossing himself every time he sees you in the hallway. Good. Maybe he'll think twice before stealing. Mrs. Carson laughed. It sounded like ravens fighting. The Duke chose well. You're exactly what this place needed. Lillian didn't know what to do with that, so she just drank her tea and pretended the words didn't lodge somewhere uncomfortable in her chest. That night, Rowan found her in the library. She'd taken to working there after dinner. The study felt too close, too intimate since that morning he'd found her crying. We received an invitation. He held up an envelope, expensive paper with a wax seal. Lord and Lady Thornberry are hosting a ball next month. They've requested our attendance. Declined. Lillian, I said declined. She didn't look up from the contract she was reviewing. You go. Charm whoever needs charming. I have actual work to do. The shareholders will be there, the ones we need to convince that Blackridge isn't collapsing. He moved closer, his footsteps silent on thick carpet. They need to see the duchy is stable, well managed. That includes seeing the person managing it. They'll see a scandal, the abandoned bride working for a bachelor duke. That's all anyone ever sees. Then let them see. He set the invitation down on her desk. Let them see you're more than their gossip, that you're competent and sharp and completely indispensable to this operation. I don't need their approval. You need their money. His voice went flat, hard. Half our contracts come up for renewal in 3 months. If the shareholders decide Blackridge is too unstable to invest in, we lose everything. Every reform you've implemented, every corrupt manager you've fired. All of it collapses because rich men decided we're not respectable enough for their portfolios. The words hit like cold water. Lillian set down her pen. You're saying if I don't go, we fail. I'm saying we need to show a united front, professional, competent, above reproach. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat, his expression careful. I know what I'm asking. I know balls are exactly where people will whisper and judge and make your life difficult, but we need this. I need this. You never needed anything before. I never had a partner before. The word hung between them. I can't do this alone, Lillian. The numbers work because of you. The contracts hold because you make them airtight. The staff actually does their jobs because they're terrified of you. But none of that matters if the shareholders pull funding. He leaned forward. One night, a few hours. Show them you're not afraid of their judgment. I am afraid. The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Rowan's expression shifted, softened. Of what? Of going back to that. Standing in a room full of people who remember. Her throat felt tight. They'll look at me and see that girl at the altar. They'll pity me or judge me, or worse, they'll pretend I don't exist. And I'll have to smile and be gracious and act like it doesn't destroy me all over again. Then don't be gracious. His voice dropped lower. Be exactly who you are now, sharp, uncompromising. The woman who made James Whitmore cry. Let them whisper, let them judge. You're not that girl anymore. You're the one they should be afraid of. She wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly it scared her. What if I can't? Can't what? Can't be that person in front of them. What if I walk in there and just break? What if they win? Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, moved around the desk until he was close enough to touch. He didn't. Just stood there, steady as stone. Then I'll be right there, and we'll leave, and we'll find another way. His eyes held hers. But you won't break. I've seen you handle worse than gossiping aristocrats. You'll walk in there like you own the place, and they'll believe it because you will. You have too much faith in me. No, I have exactly the right amount. He stepped back, giving her space. Think about it. But Lillian, we need an answer soon. The RSVP deadline is Friday. He left her there with the invitation and her fear and the growing suspicion that he was right about everything and she hated him for it. 3 days. She had 3 days to decide if she was brave enough to walk back into that world, or if she'd stay hidden forever. Her mother arrived unannounced on Thursday morning. Lillian was in the stables checking on a sick horse. The head groom had been neglecting the animals, another problem she was fixing, when Mrs. Carson appeared looking flustered. Your mother's here, miss, in the drawing room. She seems upset. That was an understatement. Martha Hawke sat rigid in one of the velvet chairs, her face the color of old parchment, clutching a newspaper like it had personally offended her. Mother, what's wrong? This. Martha thrust the paper at her. This is what's wrong. Lillian took it. The society page stared back at her, and there, in neat black ink that might as well have been branded into her skin, was a brief mention. The Duke of Blackridge has taken the unusual step of hiring Miss Lillian Hawke, daughter of Magistrate Richard Hawke, to manage his extensive estate holdings. Miss Hawke, readers may recall, was famously abandoned at the altar 2 years past by Mr. Thomas Ashford, who subsequently married Miss Catherine Walsh. One wonders what desperation drives a duke to employ such scandal in his household, or what ambitions drive a ruined woman to accept. The rest dissolved into insinuation and barely veiled accusations. Lillian's hand shook. She set the paper down carefully before she crumpled it. "They're calling you his mistress." Her mother's voice broke. "Not directly, but everyone will assume, everyone will think." "Let them think whatever they want. Lillian, this is serious. Your father is beside himself. If people believe that you and the Duke are—" "We're not." The words came out hard. Final. "We're working together, that's all." "Then why does it read like you're living in sin?" Martha stood, pacing like a caged animal. "Why are they writing about you at all? You were supposed to be invisible, safe, and instead you're in the society pages being torn apart all over again." "I was never safe. I was just quiet." Lillian moved to the window, needing distance. "And I'm tired of being quiet, tired of hiding, tired of making myself smaller so other people feel comfortable." "So you'd rather be scandalous? I'd rather be useful." The words exploded out. "I'd rather work and contribute and actually matter, instead of sitting in drawing rooms waiting to die of boredom. Is that so terrible? Is that really worse than spending the rest of my life as that poor Hawke girl everyone pities?" Her mother's face crumpled. "I just want you safe." "I know, but safe isn't enough anymore." Lillian turned to face her. "I'm going to the Thornbury ball." "What?" "The Duke and I received an invitation. I'm accepting." "Are you insane?" Martha grabbed her shoulders. "After this? After they've already decided you can't walk into that room. They'll destroy you." "They already tried. I'm still here." "Lillian, please." "No." She pulled away gently. "I'm done hiding, Mother. I'm done letting them decide who I am and what I'm worth. I'm going to that ball. I'm going to stand beside Rowan and show every single person there that I'm not afraid of them anymore." "Rowan." Her mother's voice went flat. "You call him Rowan now." Heat crept up Lillian's neck. "It's professional courtesy." "It's dangerous." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "You're falling for him. I can see it. And when he breaks your heart, because men like that always do, it'll be so much worse than Thomas, because this time you'll have chosen it." The words hit like a physical blow. "I'm not falling for anyone. I'm working. That's all." "Then why are you blushing? Why does your voice change when you say his name?" Her mother moved closer, desperate. "Baby, I know you think you're strong enough for this, but loving someone who can't love you back, it'll hollow you out from the inside. I've watched it happen to stronger women than either of us." "He's not Thomas." "No, he's worse. Because Thomas was weak and cowardly and you could hate him for it. But the Duke? He's everything you think you want. Strong, certain. Someone who sees you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's the dangerous kind. That's the kind that makes you believe, right up until the moment they walk away." Lillian felt something crack in her chest. "You think I don't know that? You think I haven't spent every single day terrified that this is just another version of the same story? That I'm setting myself up to be destroyed again?" "Then why are you doing it?" "Because I have to know." The confession ripped out of her. "I have to know if I'm brave enough to risk it. If there's any part of me left that can still trust, still hope, still believe in something besides survival." She wiped at her face angrily. "Maybe you're right. Maybe he'll break my heart. Maybe this whole thing will explode and I'll end up worse than before. But at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I didn't spend my whole life too afraid to live it." Her mother stared at her for a long moment. Then she pulled Lillian into a fierce hug. "You're so much like your father," she whispered. "Stubborn, impossible, absolutely determined to learn everything the hard way. Is that a yes? That's a please be careful and don't get your heart broken." She pulled back, wiping her own tears. "And if the Duke hurts you, your father and I will destroy him, slowly, painfully, in ways that would make the war look gentle. Despite everything, Lillian laughed. Noted. After her mother left, she found Rowan in the study. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression said he already knew. You saw the paper. My mother brought it, along with several dire warnings about my reputation and virtue. She moved to the desk, placed her hands flat on the surface. I'm going to the ball, and I'm not hiding or apologizing or pretending I'm something I'm not. If they want to judge, let them. His smile was slow and dangerous. There she is. Who? The woman who walked out of that chapel with blood on her gloves and her head held high. He stood, moved around the desk until they were too close. The one I hired, the one they should all be afraid of. I'm terrified. Good. Terror means you're paying attention. His hand lifted, almost touched her face, then dropped. We'll go together, united front. And if anyone says something that crosses a line, I'll handle it. I can handle myself. I know you can. But you don't have to. Not anymore. His voice dropped lower. That's what partners means. You're not alone in this. The words wrapped around her heart and squeezed. Rowan, don't. He stepped back like she'd burned him. Don't say whatever you're about to say. Not yet. Why not? Because I need you focused on the shareholders, not... He cut himself off, ran a hand through his hair in the first gesture of frustration she'd ever seen from him. Just trust me. After the ball. After we secure the funding. Then we'll figure out the rest. The rest of what? He looked at her like she was being deliberately obtuse. You know what? And she did. Of course she did. Had known it since that night he'd sat with her in the darkness without asking questions. Maybe before. The thing growing between them, unnamed and dangerous and completely impossible. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Terrible idea. He didn't look away. Worst I've ever had. We should stop. Probably. Rowan, after the ball, Lillian. His jaw was tight enough to crack stone. Give me until after the ball. Then, if you want to run, I won't stop you. The promise hung between them like a blade. She should run now, should pack her things and go home and never look back, should protect herself while she still could. Instead, she heard herself say, 1 ball, then we talk. 1 ball. He left before she could change her mind. Lillian stood in the empty study, her heart beating too fast, and wondered if this was what it felt like to walk toward the edge of a cliff, knowing exactly how far you'd fall. The dress arrived 3 days before the ball. Deep burgundy silk that looked like old wine, cut simple but elegant, with none of the fussy decoration that was fashionable. It fit like it had been made for her. Probably had been. The note attached was in Rowan's handwriting. War paint. R. She wore it the night of the ball and barely recognized herself in the mirror. The girl who'd stood at that altar 2 years ago had worn white and lace and believed in fairy tales. This woman wore burgundy and steel and believed in nothing but her own competence. You look fierce, Mrs. Carson said, adjusting the clasp at her neck. Like you could burn the whole place down. That's the idea. Rowan was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He'd dressed formally, dark coat, crisp white shirt, everything perfectly tailored, and the effect was devastating. He looked like exactly what he was. Dangerous, powerful, completely in control. His eyes found hers and went very still. Lillian. Just her name, but the way he said it made her skin feel too tight. You clean up well, Your Grace. So do you. He offered his arm. Ready for battle? Never. Good answer. The carriage ride to Thornbury Estate took 30 minutes. They didn't speak. The silence felt heavy with everything they weren't saying. When they arrived, the ball was already in full swing. Music spilled out into the night, laughter, the clink of champagne glasses, all the sounds of society enjoying itself. Lillian's hands started shaking. Hey! Rowan covered her hand with his, warm and steady. Look at me. She did. You're Lillian Hawke. You made James Whitmore cry. You renegotiated Lord Pembleton's water rights so thoroughly he's still complaining 6 months later. You've rebuilt half my duchy in 3 months and scared the rest into compliance. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. These people? They're nothing. Just noise. You're the real thing. What if I'm not? Then you're an excellent liar, and that's just as useful. He smiled. Either way, you're walking in there with me, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. She took a breath, then another. Okay. Let's go terrify some aristocrats. His laugh was quiet and genuine. That's my girl. The words shouldn't have affected her. They did anyway. They walked in together, heads high, shoulders back, and the whispers started immediately. Lillian heard fragments. Actually came. Nerve of her. What was he thinking? She kept walking. Lord Thornbury greeted them with the kind of stiff politeness that meant he'd heard the gossip but needed Rowan's money too much to be rude. His wife looked like she'd swallowed glass. Duke Blackridge and Miss Hawke. How unexpected. Is it? Rowan's voice was pure ice. I sent an RSVP 3 weeks ago. Surely you received it. Yes, of course. I just meant, then there's nothing unexpected about it. He moved past them, pulling Lillian along. Excellent. We'll find the shareholders now. They worked the room with ruthless efficiency. Rowan introduced her as his estate manager, not his companion, not his friend, his estate manager, and watched with visible satisfaction as important men realized they'd have to take her seriously. Miss Hawke has restructured our entire Northern holdings, he told Lord Carlisle, one of the major shareholders, increased yield by 18%, recovered nearly £20,000 in embezzled funds, renegotiated every major contract. Carlisle looked at her like she was a particularly interesting insect. That's quite remarkable. For a woman. For anyone, Rowan corrected, his voice sharp enough to cut. I'd challenge you to find a male estate manager who's accomplished half as much in 3 months. Yes, well, Carlisle's smile didn't reach his eyes. Still, quite unusual. One wonders at the arrangement. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Lillian felt Rowan go very still beside her, felt the anger radiating off him like heat. Careful. His voice dropped to something dangerous. You're about to say something that will cost you more than money. I'm simply observing. You're implying my estate manager is something other than a professional employee, which is not only insulting to her, but factually incorrect. And if you value your position in the consortium, you'll apologize. Now. The silence that fell was absolute. Carlisle's face went purple. You can't speak to me like, I just did. Apologize, or explain to your investors why Blackridge pulled all funding from your railway project. 5 seconds. 10. My apologies, Miss Hawke. I spoke out of turn. The words were ground glass, but Lillian smiled anyway. Accepted, Lord Carlisle. It's easy to mistake competence for something else when you're not used to seeing it. Rowan's hand tightened on her arm. Whether in support or restraint, she couldn't tell. They moved on. The rest of the evening blurred. More introductions, more barely veiled insults, more shareholders who looked at her like she was either a curiosity or a scandal. Rowan stayed close, his presence a constant weight at her side. She was handling it, actually handling it. Right up until she saw Catherine Walsh. The former seamstress had married well. Her dress was expensive, her jewels real, her transformation complete. She stood near the refreshment table with Thomas Ashford at her side, looking every inch the respectable wife. Their eyes met across the room. Catherine's mouth opened, closed. Then she started walking toward them. No, please no. Lillian, Catherine's voice was soft, apologetic. I hoped I might see you here. I've wanted to speak with you for so long. Don't. The word came out hard. Don't do this here. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for how it happened. You deserve better than having my groom run off with you the morning of our wedding. Yes, I did deserve better than that. Lillian's voice stayed level through sheer force of will. But you know what? I'm grateful. Because if Thomas hadn't been a coward, I'd be married to a man who falls in love with every pretty face he sees. So thank you. You did me a favor. Catherine's face crumpled. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't care. Lillian stepped closer, her voice dropping. But here's the thing. You got what you wanted, the husband. the respectability, the life you thought I had. And I got free. Got to find out who I actually am when I'm not performing for someone else. So really, who won? She turned to leave and nearly walked straight into Thomas. He looked older, softer, less like the man she'd almost married and more like a stranger who happened to share his face. Lillian, he swallowed hard. I owe you an apology. A real one. What I did was unforgivable. Yes, she met his eyes without flinching. It was. I was young and stupid, and I thought, I don't know what I thought, that I could have everything, that you'd understand somehow. His laugh was bitter. But I see you now, and I realize what I gave up. You didn't give up anything. Her voice was steady. You made a choice. Live with it. She walked away before he could respond. Rowan was waiting just outside the ballroom, his expression dark. I'm leaving. Her voice shook. I'm sorry. I know we need to stay, but I can't be here anymore. Then we leave. The shareholders can wait. He offered his arm. Come on. They made it to the carriage before her composure shattered completely. Great heaving sobs that she couldn't control, couldn't stop, couldn't hide. Rowan pulled her against his chest and just held her. I hate them, she gasped between sobs. I hate that they can still do this to me, that I let them. You didn't let them do anything. You survived them. Again. His hand moved in slow circles on her back. And tomorrow, you'll wake up and keep being exactly who you are. And there'll still be small people with small lives who peaked at some ball 20 years ago. She pulled back, wiping at her face. I thought I was stronger than this. You are. He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears. Strong enough to walk in there. Strong enough to face them. Strong enough to walk back out on your own terms. That's everything. I wanted to prove I was over it, that they couldn't hurt me anymore. They can always hurt you. That's not weakness. That's being human. His eyes searched hers. But you didn't break. You bent. There's a difference. The space between them felt charged, electric. Rowan, I know. His voice was rough. I know what I said. After the ball. But I can't wait anymore. For what? This. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. Wasn't careful. It was desperate and hungry and completely inevitable, like something that had been building since that first day in the study when he'd looked at her and seen everything she'd tried to hide. Lillian kissed him back. Kissed him like she'd been drowning and he was air. Kissed him like all the fear and anger and grief of the past 2 years had condensed into this single moment, and she could either break or burn, and she chose fire. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, his forehead pressed against hers. That was a bad idea, she whispered. Terrible. We're working together. This complicates everything. I know. People will say, they'll assume, let them. His hands were still cupped around her face. I don't care what they say. I care about you, about this, about whether you feel even a fraction of what I do. The confession escaped before she could stop it. I feel all of it, and it terrifies me. Good. He kissed her again, softer this time. Be terrified. But be terrified with me. The carriage pulled up to Blackridge Hall. They sat in the darkness, neither one moving. What happens now? Lillian asked finally. Now we figure it out. Together. He helped her down, his hand lingering on hers. Unless you want to run. I'd understand if... I'm tired of running. She squeezed his hand. And I'm tired of being afraid. So whatever this is, whatever we're doing, I'm choosing it. Choosing you. Even though it's stupid and reckless and probably going to destroy me. His smile was slow and devastating. Those are terrible reasons to start a relationship. I know, but they're honest. Honest I can work with. He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into the warmth of him. Let herself believe, just for a moment, that this might actually work. That she might actually be brave enough to trust again. They stood there in the darkness, wrapped around each other, and Lillian felt the last pieces of her armor start to crack. felt the fear rush in, cold and sharp and absolutely certain that this would end badly. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt almost like hope. And for the first time in 2 years, she let herself feel it. She woke the next morning to panic. Not the slow, creeping kind that built over hours, but the immediate visceral terror that had her sitting upright in bed, heart hammering, skin cold with sweat. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Birds sang outside. Everything looked exactly the same as it had yesterday, except she'd kissed him. Let him kiss her. Told him she was choosing this. What had she been thinking? The knock on her door came before she could spiral completely. "Lillian?" Rowan's voice muffled through wood. "Are you awake?" She pulled the blankets up to her chin like they could protect her from her own stupidity. "Go away." "Can't. We have a problem. We have several problems. The first being that last night. I met with the shareholders, but we can discuss your regrets later if you want." His tone was dry enough to start fires. "Get dressed. Meet me in the study in 20 minutes. He left before she could argue. Lillian dressed in a fury of movement, fingers fumbling with buttons, her mind racing through every possible disaster. The shareholders had pulled funding. Someone had seen them in the carriage. Lord Carlisle had spread more vicious rumors. Thomas had... She forced herself to stop. Breathe. Think. Whatever the problem was, panicking wouldn't fix it. The study door was open when she arrived. Rowan stood at his desk, 3 letters spread in front of him, his expression unreadable. "What happened?" "Read these." He handed her the first letter. It was from Lord Carlisle, brief, pointed. Withdrawing his investment in the mining consortium pending further review of Blackridge's management practices. The second was from Lady Thornbury, even briefer. Canceling a contract for steel shipments, citing concerns about the duchy's reputation. The third was from someone named Harrison Wolfe, a banker in London she didn't recognize, politely suggesting that perhaps the Duke should reconsider his staffing choices given the negative attention it was drawing. Lillian set them down carefully. "They're punishing you for defending me. They're testing me, seeing if I'll fold under pressure." He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "Carlisle wants me to fire you. That's what the withdrawal is really about. He'll reinvest the moment you're gone. Then I'll leave." "No. Rowan, you're losing money because of me. I'm losing money because men like Carlisle think they can control me by threatening my business." He turned to face her, and his expression was granite. "If I fire you now, it proves they were right. That you were just a scandal I was tolerating. That women can't actually do this work. That the moment it gets difficult, I'll choose money over principle. Money keeps the duchy running. Principle keeps me human." He crossed to her, urgent. "You've rebuilt half my holdings in 4 months. Recovered funds I thought were gone forever. Implemented reforms that will save us hundreds of thousands over the next decade. Those are facts, numbers. Undeniable proof that you're exceptional at this job." His jaw tightened. "I'm not firing you because some pearl-clutching aristocrats decided your existence offends them. What if more pull out? What if we lose everything?" "Then we lose it fighting, together." He reached for her hand, then stopped. "Unless you want out. If this is too much, if last night was a mistake you regret, I'll understand. You can go home. No judgment, no hard feelings." The offer hung between them. Lillian looked at the letters, at the numbers they represented, at the future they threatened to destroy. Then she looked at Rowan, at the man who'd hired her when no one else would, who'd defended her in ballrooms and believed her capable of rebuilding a duchy, who'd kissed her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. "I'm not leaving." The words came out steady. "Sure. And last night wasn't a mistake. Reckless, yes. Stupid, probably, but not a mistake." Something in his expression shifted, warmed. "Good, because I have a plan, and it requires both of us being completely insane." "I'm listening." "We call their bluff, publicly." He pulled another paper from his desk, a draft of something that looked like a formal statement. "I'm going to publish the duchy's financial reports. Every contract you've renegotiated, every pound you've recovered, every reform you've implemented. Complete transparency. Let the numbers speak for themselves. Lillian stared at him. Dukes don't publish their accounts. That's private information, which is how men like Carlyle get away with corruption. Nobody sees the books, so nobody knows who's actually competent and who's just coasting on inherited wealth. His smile was sharp. We publish everything. Show exactly how much you've improved Blackridge's holdings in 4 months. Make it impossible for anyone to claim you're just a scandal I'm tolerating. They'll say it's fabricated, that you're lying to protect me. Which is why I'm also inviting independent auditors, 3 separate firms. Let them verify every number, every contract, every claim. He leaned against the desk. If we're going to do this, if we're going to prove you belong here, we do it so thoroughly that even Carlyle can't argue. It was insane, brilliant, completely unprecedented. What if the auditors find something wrong? Then we fix it publicly, with full transparency. He met her eyes. I'm tired of playing by their rules, Lillian. Rules designed to keep people like you out and people like Carlyle in power. So we changed the game. Make competence matter more than respectability. This could destroy you. Or it could work. He pushed off the desk, started pacing. Either way, we're doing something. I'm not sitting here letting them bully you out of a job you're excellent at because they're uncomfortable with change. Lillian felt something fierce and sharp unfold in her chest. When do we start? Now. I need you to compile every report you've written, every contract negotiation, every recovered fund, everything with numbers we can verify. He grabbed paper, started making lists. We'll publish in stages. Start with the mining contracts. Those show the biggest improvement. Then the tenant agreements. Then the recovered embezzlements. What about the shareholders who pulled out? Let them pull out. We'll find new ones. Better ones. People who actually care about results over reputation. His pen moved fast across the page. Harrison Wolfe in London. He's cautious but fair. If he sees solid numbers, he'll invest. Same with Margaret Thorne. She runs a textile empire and doesn't care about scandal, only profit. They worked through breakfast, through lunch. By dinner, they had a plan that was either going to revolutionize how duchies operated or get them both laughed out of aristocratic society. Lillian found she didn't particularly care which. This is going to make people very angry, she said as the sun set outside. Good. Angry people make mistakes. Rowan looked up from his notes. Comfortable people maintain the status quo. We need them uncomfortable. You sound like you're planning a war. I am, just a different kind. He set down his pen, rubbed his eyes. The kind where we prove that merit matters more than gender, that transparency beats corruption, that women can run estates just as well as men, better, in your case. No pressure, then. His laugh was tired but genuine. You've handled worse. Had she? Lillian wasn't sure anymore. The altar had been public humiliation. This was choosing to step into the fire and hoping she didn't burn. Rowan, she waited until he looked at her. What if this doesn't work? What if we publish everything and they still don't care? What if the numbers aren't enough? Then we tried. And at least we'll know. He stood, moved around the desk until he was close. But I think it will work. I think people are tired of corruption and nepotism and incompetence being rewarded just because it comes wrapped in the right family name. I think they want something real, something earned. You have a lot of faith in humanity. No, I have a lot of faith in you. His hand cupped her face. You're the real thing, Lillian. Anyone with eyes can see it. We just need to make sure they're actually looking. She leaned into his touch, let herself have this moment of closeness before the storm hit. For the record, this is still insane. Completely. He kissed her forehead, but we're doing it anyway. They published the first report 3 days later. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Half of society called it unprecedented transparency. The other half called it a desperate publicity stunt. The newspapers had a field day, some praising the Duke's progressive approach, others questioning his sanity for letting a woman handle such important work. Then the numbers started circulating. Actual accountants began reviewing the published contracts, comparing Lillian's negotiations to previous agreements, running the calculations themselves. The mining contracts alone showed a 32% increase in efficiency. The tenant agreements had reduced disputes by nearly 40%, while actually increasing duchy revenue. The recovered embezzlements totaled over £50,000 that would have been lost forever without her intervention. The numbers didn't lie. "They're calling you a prodigy," Mrs. Carson said one morning, setting down a newspaper with visible glee. "Listen to this. Miss Hawke's restructuring of the Blackridge Northern Holdings demonstrates a level of financial acumen rarely seen in estate management, regardless of the manager's gender." She looked up. "That's from the Financial Times. They don't praise lightly." Lillian couldn't quite process it. They're taking it seriously? Some are. Others are still insisting you must have had help, that the Duke did the real work and put your name on it for, she waved a hand vaguely, some scandalous reason they keep implying but won't say outright. Let them imply. Rowan appeared in the doorway, his own newspaper in hand. "The auditors arrive tomorrow, 3 separate firms. Once they verify the numbers, even the skeptics will have to admit you're legitimate." The auditors were thorough, brutal. They spent 2 weeks combing through every ledger, every contract, every transaction Lillian had handled. She sat for hours answering questions, explaining decisions, justifying every choice she'd made. It was exhausting. "Walk me through this negotiation," Mr. Patterson from the first firm said, pointing to the Pembleton water rights contract. "How did you arrive at these terms?" Lord Pembleton was diverting water from the northern streams to his private holdings. The original agreement gave him access, but he was taking triple the allotted amount. Lillian pulled out the supporting documents. "I documented the actual usage, compared it to the contract terms, and presented him with evidence of breach. Then I offered new terms, reduced access at fair market rates, with strict monitoring. He could accept and keep some water rights, or refuse and lose all of them in court. And he accepted. After 3 weeks of negotiation, yes." She met his eyes. "Men like Lord Pembleton only respect pressure. You have to be willing to follow through on consequences." Patterson made notes. Aggressive strategy. Effective strategy. She didn't apologize. Wouldn't. He studied her for a long moment. "You don't negotiate like most estate managers. Most estate managers are men who learned from other men who learned from their fathers. They negotiate like gentlemen." She smiled without humor. "I never had that luxury. I negotiate like someone who has to prove herself every single day, someone who can't afford to lose." "Is that what this is? Proving yourself?" "This is me being good at my job. If that proves something in the process, fine." She pulled out another ledger. "What else do you need to verify?" By the end of the second week, all 3 firms had submitted their reports. Rowan read them first. His face gave nothing away. "Well?" Lillian couldn't take the suspense. "How bad is it?" "See for yourself." He handed her Patterson's report. She read in silence, her heart climbing into her throat. Unprecedented level of competence. Contracts negotiated with remarkable skill. Financial improvements exceed initial claims. No evidence of impropriety or falsification. Recommendation: Miss Hawke's methods should be studied as a model for modern estate management. "They're recommending you as a model," Rowan said quietly. "All 3 firms. They want other estates to study what you've done here." Lillian couldn't breathe. They actually believed you." "Yes." He pulled her into his arms. "Because you're brilliant. Because the numbers don't lie. Because you're exactly as good as I knew you were." She buried her face in his chest and tried not to cry. "This doesn't change everything," she said against his shirt. "People will still talk, still judge. Let them. We have independent verification from 3 respected firms. We have numbers that speak for themselves. We have proof." His hand moved through her hair. "You're not a scandal anymore, Lillian. You're a phenomenon." The publications of the audit reports caused another explosion. Newspapers that had mocked her suddenly wanted interviews. Estate managers who'd dismissed her as a publicity stunt started asking about her methods. Even some of the shareholders who'd pulled funding began quietly reaching out about reinvestment. "Lord Carlisle sent a letter," Rowan told her one evening, "wants to discuss reinstating his investment." "What did you tell him?" "That his investment is no longer welcome at Blackridge, that we found better partners who don't question our staffing choices." His smile was cold satisfaction. Also, that if he ever implies you're incompetent again, I'll publish his own estate's financial records and let everyone see exactly how poorly he manages his holdings. You wouldn't. Try me. He poured them both wine. I'm done being diplomatic with men who think gender matters more than competence. Let them choke on their prejudice. Lillian took her glass. Let the warmth spread through her. You're enjoying this. Immensely. Watching you prove them all wrong. Watching them have to admit they were wrong. It's the most satisfying thing I've experienced in years. He raised his glass. To changing the game. To surviving it. She clinked her glass against his. Barely. They drank in comfortable silence. What happens now? She asked eventually. Now we keep working. Keep proving this wasn't a fluke. Keep building something that lasts. He set down his glass, moved closer. And we figure out what this is, between us. Her heart stuttered. We've been busy. We've been avoiding it. I've been avoiding it. He took her hand. But those auditors verified more than just contracts, Lillian. They verified that this partnership works. That we work. Professionally. And personally? That's what I'm trying to figure out. He pulled her to her feet, into his arms. I know what I want. Know what I feel. But I also know you're terrified. That trust doesn't come easy. That the last time you let yourself believe in someone, he destroyed you. This is different. Is it? How do you know? The question hung between them. Lillian thought about it. About Thomas who'd run. About Rowan who'd stayed. About the difference between words and actions, promises and proof. Because you show up, she said finally. Every day. Even when it's hard. Even when defending me costs you money and reputation. You don't just say you'll be there. You are there. She looked up at him. That's how I know. His kiss was soft, certain, nothing like the desperate passion in the carriage. This was different, slower, like he was memorizing her. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. I want to do this right, he said quietly. Not fast, not hidden. Not like we're ashamed or afraid of what people will say. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to court you, properly, publicly. Let everyone see that this isn't some scandal or social experiment, that you're... He stopped, swallowed. That you're important to me, that this is real. Panic and hope warred in her chest. Rowan, I know it's complicated. I know people will talk. I know you're still afraid. His hands framed her face. But I also know I'm falling for you. Might already be gone, honestly. And I'd rather risk everything being honest about it than spend the rest of my life pretending you're just my employee. The words terrified her. The words made her want to believe. What if I'm not ready? Then we go slow as you need. His thumb brushed her cheek. I'm not Thomas, Lillian. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm here for as long as you'll have me. She wanted to say yes, wanted it so badly she could taste it, but the fear, that old familiar fear, wrapped around her throat and squeezed. I need time. Take it. He kissed her forehead. I'm not going anywhere. 2 weeks later, an invitation arrived from Margaret Thorne. The textile magnate wanted to meet with them in London. Specifically wanted to meet Lillian. Had questions about implementing similar reforms in her own holdings. This is huge, Rowan said, reading the letter for the third time. Thorne doesn't meet with just anyone. If she's interested in your methods, if she wants to implement them in her business, you're not just an estate manager anymore. You're an innovator. Lillian felt dizzy. I'm not qualified to advise on textiles. You're qualified to advise on management, on efficiency, on rooting out corruption and implementing accountability. He grabbed her shoulders, urgent. Don't you see what this means? You've proven that your methods work for a duchy. If they work for a textile empire too, if other businesses start adopting your approach, you'll have changed how estates operate across England. That's terrifying. That's extraordinary. His smile was fierce with pride. You did this, Lillian. You took humiliation and turned it into authority, took being abandoned and turned it into being indispensable. You've rewritten your own story. The words hit like lightning. She had, hadn't she? The girl at the altar was gone. In her place was someone else, someone stronger, someone who'd proven herself against impossible odds, someone who might actually be brave enough to risk her heart again. "Come to London with me," she said suddenly. "Of course. I'll arrange— No, I mean," she took a breath, "come to London with me. As more than my employer, as whatever this is. Together. Publicly." He went very still. "You're sure?" "No, I'm terrified, but I'm doing it anyway." She grabbed his hands. "You said you wanted to court me properly, so court me. Take me to London. Introduce me to Margaret Thorne as your partner in every sense. Let people see that you're mine." His voice was rough. "And I'm yours." "Yes." His kiss was answer and promise and celebration all at once. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, he was smiling. "London it is." The trip took 2 days to arrange. They left on a Tuesday morning, the autumn sun bright and cold, the carriage loaded with documents and proposals and all the evidence of Lillian's competence. Rowan held her hand the entire journey. "You're shaking," he said as they crossed into London proper. "I'm terrified." "Of Margaret Thorne?" "Of all of it. Of succeeding. Of what happens after." She squeezed his hand. "Of choosing this and finding out I was wrong. That I can't actually do this." "You can." He pulled her closer. "And even if you stumble, even if something goes wrong, I'll be right there. We'll figure it out together." "Promise?" "Promise." Margaret Thorne's estate was impressive, a modern building in the heart of the business district, all glass and steel and obvious wealth. They were shown into an office that looked more like a general's war room than a lady's sitting room. The woman herself was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and sharper dressed, with the kind of presence that filled a space without effort. "Duke Blackridge, and you must be the infamous Miss Hawke." Her handshake was firm. "I've read the audit reports with great interest. Sit. Tell me how you did it." The next 3 hours were the most intense of Lillian's life. Margaret asked questions that cut straight to the bone, challenged every answer, demanded proof, examples, specific numbers. She was relentless. She was also genuinely interested. "The problem with most estate managers," Margaret said, pouring them all tea herself, "is that they're trained to maintain, not innovate. Keep things running as they've always run. Don't make waves. Don't question inherited systems." She looked at Lillian. "You questioned everything." "I didn't have a choice. I wasn't trained for this. I had to figure out what made sense rather than what was traditional." "And you succeeded spectacularly." Margaret set down her cup. "I want to hire you." The room went silent. "Excuse me?" Lillian's voice came out strangled. "As a consultant, I have 17 factories, hundreds of contracts, thousands of employees, and I suspect half of them are operating the way they've always operated without anyone asking if that's actually efficient." She leaned forward. "I want you to do for my business what you did for Blackridge. Find the corruption, renegotiate the contracts, implement accountability. I'll pay you." She named a figure that made Lillian's head spin. That's an enormous amount of money for enormous work. You'd spend 6 months analyzing my operations, another 6 implementing reforms, a year of your life." Margaret's smile was sharp. "And in exchange, you'd revolutionize the textile industry, plus make enough money to be independently wealthy. No husband required." Rowan's hand tightened on hers under the table. "I'll need to discuss it with the Duke," Lillian managed. "Of course. I expect an answer within the month." Margaret stood, signaling the meeting's end. "But Miss Hawke, understand what I'm offering. This isn't charity. This is recognition. You've proven you're exceptional at this work. I'm simply giving you a larger canvas." They left in a daze. Made it back to the hotel before Lillian started laughing. "She wants to hire me. Margaret Thorne wants to hire me. She wants to hire the woman who rebuilt my duchy in 4 months. Of course she does." Rowan pulled her into his arms. "What are you going to tell her?" "I don't know. I never thought—" She looked up at him. "What do you want me to say?" "That depends. Are you asking as my estate manager or as the woman I'm falling in love with?" The words hit like a thunderclap. What? Falling in love with you. Probably already there, honestly. His expression was open, vulnerable. And if you take Margaret's offer, I lose you. For a year at minimum. Maybe longer if you decide you like independence better than partnership. So you don't want me to take it? I didn't say that. He cupped her face. I want you to take whatever makes you happy. Whatever proves to you that you're extraordinary. Whatever future you want to build. His thumb brushed her cheek. Even if that future doesn't include me. Lillian's heart cracked open. You really mean that? Every word. He kissed her softly. But I'm also hoping, selfishly, desperately hoping, that maybe your future does include me. That maybe we can figure out something that gives you independence and still lets me wake up next to you. She kissed him. Kissed him like he was air and water and everything she'd been too afraid to want. Kissed him until they were both breathless and desperate and completely certain. I want both, she gasped against his mouth. Want the work and the challenge and the chance to prove myself. But I also want you. Want this. Want us. Then we'll figure it out. His hands tangled in her hair. We'll make it work somehow. Long engagement, frequent visits, correspondence, whatever it takes. A long engagement. Very long, years if you need them. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I'm not asking you to choose between your career and me, Lillian. I'm asking you to choose yourself. And trust that I'll still be here when you're ready. The tears came fast and unexpected. Why are you doing this? Because I love you. Because you deserve someone who doesn't ask you to make yourself smaller. Because watching you succeed is the best thing I've ever witnessed. He kissed her tears away. Because you're Lillian Hawke. And Lillian Hawke doesn't settle. Not anymore. She held him tight, her face buried in his chest, and felt the last pieces of her armor finally shatter. Felt the fear rush in, and then rush out again, leaving something else in its place. Trust. Real trust. The kind that came from actions, not words. From proof, not promises. The kind she'd thought she'd lost forever at that altar 2 years ago. I love you too, she whispered, even though it terrifies me. Good. His laugh was shaky with relief. Be terrified, but be terrified with me. They stood there in the hotel room, wrapped around each other, and Lillian felt something shift fundamentally in her chest. She wasn't the abandoned bride anymore. She wasn't even the formidable estate manager who'd rebuilt a duchy. She was just Lillian, loved and loving, scared and brave, choosing herself and choosing him, and learning that maybe, just maybe, she could have both. The decision came easier than she expected. They stayed in London another 3 days, working out the details with Margaret Thorne. 6 months consulting on the textile business, with the option to extend if needed. Lillian would maintain her position at Blackridge remotely. The contracts were stable enough now that she could manage from a distance. Rowan would visit London monthly. She'd return to Blackridge between projects. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. My mother is going to have an attack when she hears, Lillian said on the carriage ride back. Her unmarried daughter working in London, living independently, consulting for one of the wealthiest women in England. She'll think I've lost my mind completely. Have you? Rowan's tone was mild, but his eyes held amusement. Probably, but I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl. The word still sent warmth through her chest. His girl, not his possession, not his project, just his. They arrived at Blackridge Hall as the sun set, painting the stone walls amber and gold. Home, Lillian thought, and felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. Mrs. Carson met them at the door, practically vibrating with news. You have visitors, been waiting 3 hours, refused to leave. She looked between them, her expression unreadable. Your parents, Miss Hawke, and someone else. Lillian's stomach dropped. Someone else. See for yourself. They found her parents in the drawing room, her father pacing while her mother sat rigid in the corner, and standing by the window looking uncomfortable in expensive clothes that didn't quite fit him. Thomas Ashford. The room went silent. What is he doing here? Lillian's voice came out flat, cold. Her father stepped forward. He came to us first. Insisted on speaking with you. Said it was important. I have nothing to say to him. Lillian, please. Thomas moved toward her, hands raised like she was a skittish horse. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. You don't get to ask me for anything. She turned to leave. I'm getting divorced. The word stopped her cold. She turned back slowly. What? Catherine and I, we're ending the marriage. It's been a disaster from the start. Turns out building a life on someone else's pain doesn't actually work. His laugh was bitter. Who knew? I don't care about your marriage problems. I know. I don't expect you to, but I needed you to know. I needed to tell you that I was wrong. About everything. He took a breath. I convinced myself I was in love with Catherine, that what we had was real. But it wasn't. It was just me being a coward, wanting the easy thing instead of working for what mattered. Rowan shifted beside her. She felt his presence like armor. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you deserved better. You deserved someone who saw what you were worth and didn't run from it. But Thomas looked at her directly for the first time. And I see it now. See what I gave up, what I destroyed. And I needed you to know, that I understand exactly how badly I failed you. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to give you closure. Let you know that what happened, it wasn't about you. It was never about you. His voice cracked. You were perfect. You would have been an incredible wife, and I was too stupid and selfish to see it until it was too late. The apology sat heavy in the air. 2 years ago, Lillian would have wanted this, would have needed to hear him say he was wrong, that she wasn't the problem. Now? You're right, she said quietly. I would have been an incredible wife, to someone who deserved me, who saw me, who didn't need 2 years in a failed marriage to realize what he lost. She moved closer to Rowan, felt his hand settle warm and certain at the small of her back. But I'm glad you didn't show up that day. Glad you ran, because it forced me to become someone better than the woman who would have married you. Thomas flinched like she'd struck him. I'm not here asking for forgiveness, he said. I know I don't deserve it. I wanted you to know the truth, that leaving you was the worst mistake I ever made. I know. She met his eyes without fear, without anger. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. She turned and walked out, Rowan's hand in hers, leaving Thomas standing in the drawing room with the ruins of his apology. Her parents followed them into the hallway. Lillian, wait! Her mother started. Why did you bring him here? The words came out sharper than intended. What possible reason could you have for letting him back into my life? He begged, her father said quietly, said he needed to make amends, that he'd been carrying the guilt for 2 years and it was destroying him. He looked tired, older. We thought maybe you needed to hear it. To know it wasn't your fault. I already know it wasn't my fault. Lillian's voice rose despite her efforts to control it. I've known that since the day after it happened. I didn't need Thomas's confession to tell me I was worth more than what he gave me. Then why are you still so angry? Her mother's eyes filled with tears. If you've moved on, if you're truly over it, why does seeing him upset you so much? Because he doesn't get to come back now. The words exploded out. He doesn't get to apologize and feel better about himself while I'm the one who lived through the aftermath, who survived the gossip and the pity and the years of rebuilding myself into someone who could function again. He ran away from the consequences. I didn't have that option. The silence that followed was enormous. You're right, her father said finally. We shouldn't have brought him here. Shouldn't have let him think he had any right to your forgiveness. He moved closer, his expression pained. But Lillian, at some point, you have to let go of the anger. Not for him, for yourself. I have let go. No, you haven't. You're still fighting, still proving yourself to people who stopped mattering the moment you walked out of that chapel. He gestured at Rowan. You found someone who sees you, who values you, who's standing right here choosing you every single day. But you're so busy being angry at the past that you can't quite trust the present. The words hit like stones. That's not fair. It's completely fair. Her mother stepped forward. We love you, darling. We're proud of everything you've accomplished. But you're still carrying that day like a weight, still letting it define you. And until you actually forgive yourself for being human enough to get hurt, until you let yourself believe you deserve this happiness, you'll never be free of it. Lillian felt Rowan's hand tighten on hers. I don't know how, she whispered. Yes, you do. Her father's smile was sad. You already started. You took this job. You built this partnership. You chose this man despite every instinct telling you to run. You're braver than you think, Lillian. You just need to believe it. They left an hour later, after tea and careful conversation, and her mother crying over how grown up her daughter had become. Thomas had already gone, slipped out the back, Mrs. Carson reported, looking like a man heading to his own execution. Good, Lillian thought viciously. Let him suffer. Your parents aren't wrong, Rowan said that night as they stood together in the study. About the anger. I know. She leaned into his warmth. I don't know how to let it go. It's been part of me for so long. What happens if I stop being angry? Who am I without it? You're still you, just lighter. He turned her to face him. The anger served you, kept you moving when you wanted to collapse, gave you fuel when everything else ran out. But you don't need it anymore. You've already won. Have I? You rebuilt a duchy, impressed Margaret Thorne, proven yourself to everyone who doubted you, made men like Carlyle and Thomas realize exactly what they lost. His hands framed her face. You've rewritten your story completely. The only person who still sees you as that abandoned girl is you. The truth of it settled into her bones. I'm scared, she admitted, of letting it go, of what happens after. Then be scared, but do it anyway. He kissed her softly. Choose the future instead of the past. Choose us. Choose yourself. She kissed him back, deep and certain, and felt something in her chest finally release its grip, the anger, the fear, the need to prove herself over and over again to people who never mattered, all of it dissolving into something lighter, something that felt almost like peace. 3 months later, Lillian stood in Margaret Thorne's factory, reviewing production schedules with the kind of focused intensity that made grown men nervous. She'd found corruption here, too. Managers skimming profits, unsafe conditions being ignored, workers being cheated on wages. She'd fired 6 people in her first month. The rest learned fast. You're terrifying, Margaret said, appearing at her elbow. I love it. My profits are up 18% and my workers actually show up on time now. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Just basic accountability. Amazing what happens when people know they can't steal without consequences. Basic to you, revolutionary to everyone else. Margaret handed her a letter. This came for you, from the Duke. Lillian opened it there, unable to wait. Miss Hawke, the northern contracts closed successfully. Your projections were accurate to the penny. The shareholders are so impressed they're asking if you'd consider returning to consult on the expansion project. I told them you're busy revolutionizing the textile industry, but might be convinced if they offer enough money. Also, I miss you. The study feels empty without you arguing with me about proper accounting methods. Come home soon. Yours, R. She smiled despite herself. Home. Blackridge Hall had become home somewhere along the way, not because of the estate or the work or even the success, but because of him, because of the partnership they'd built. Because for the first time in her life, home meant a person instead of a place. You're going back, Margaret observed. Eventually. I have 3 more months on this contract. You should go now. The factories will survive without you for a week. Her smile was knowing. And that man writes like someone who needs to see you with his own eyes to believe you're real. Lillian hesitated. The project isn't finished. The project will never be finished. There's always more work, more contracts, more corruption to root out. Margaret squeezed her shoulder. But there's only one man who looks at you like you hung the stars. Don't make him wait just because you're afraid of being happy. The words followed her all the way back to Blackridge. She arrived late at night, unannounced, her heart hammering as the carriage pulled up to the dark house. Most of the windows were black, but the study glowed with lamplight. He was still working. Lillian let herself in quietly, moved through halls that felt familiar now, and pushed open the study door. Rowan looked up from his desk, pen frozen mid-word. For a moment, he just stared. Lillian? I'm here. She moved into the room, suddenly uncertain. I needed to see you, and Margaret said the factories could survive without me for a few days, so I came home. He was around the desk in seconds, pulling her into his arms hard enough to lift her off her feet. "You came home," he repeated against her hair. "I came home." They stood there holding each other, and Lillian felt the last pieces of her old life finally fall away. The girl at the altar, the abandoned bride, the woman who'd turned humiliation into armor, all of it gone. In its place was just this, just her and him, and the future they were building together. "Marry me," Rowan said suddenly. Lillian pulled back to look at him. "What?" "Marry me. Not now. Not soon. Whenever you're ready." His eyes were serious, certain. "But marry me eventually. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm not going anywhere, that this is real, that you can trust me." The proposal should have terrified her. It didn't. "Yes," she heard herself say, "but on my terms." "Name them." "Long engagement, at least a year, maybe 2. I want time to be sure, to know this isn't just some reaction to finally being chosen. Done. And I keep working, keep consulting, keep being myself even after we're married. No expectations that I'll give up my career to be your duchess. I'm counting on it. The duchy runs better with you in it. And we marry at the chapel." The words came out before she could stop them. "The one where Thomas left me. I want to go back there, want to replace that memory with something better." Rowan went very still. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." And she was, completely. "That place broke me once. I want to prove it doesn't have that power anymore. Want to walk in there on my own terms and choose this. Choose you. Choose us." His kiss was answer and promise, and everything she'd been too afraid to hope for. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he was smiling. "A year then, maybe 2. Long engagement. You keep working. We get married at the chapel." He pulled her close again. "Anything else?" "Just one thing." She looked up at him, this man who'd seen her at her worst and decided she was worth fighting for anyway. "Don't run. Even when I'm difficult, even when I'm scared, even when every instinct tells you to protect yourself, just don't run. Never." The word was iron. The word, "I'll be here, every day, every argument, every triumph, and every disaster. You're stuck with me now." "Good." She kissed him again. "Because I'm done running too." 18 months later, Lillian stood at the entrance to the same chapel where her life had shattered. The doors were open. Autumn sunlight streamed through stained glass. White roses lined the pews, but this time mixed with burgundy, the color of war paint and new beginnings. Her mother adjusted her veil with shaking hands. "You're sure about this? About marrying here?" "I'm sure." Lillian looked at her reflection in the small mirror her mother held. The woman staring back was different from the girl who'd stood here 2 years ago. Stronger. Harder. But also softer somehow. Less afraid. "You look beautiful," her father said, his voice rough with emotion. "And terrifying. Your husband is a lucky man. He's also waiting. Let's not make him nervous." They walked to the chapel entrance together. Through the open doors, Lillian could see the same pews, the same altar, the same people who'd witnessed her humiliation. But this time, there was a man standing at the altar waiting for her. Rowan, in formal dress that made him look even more dangerous than usual, his eyes locked on the doorway like he could will her to appear through sheer force of wanting. When he saw her, his whole expression transformed. The music started. Her father offered his arm. "Ready?" "More than." They walked down the aisle together, past whispers that were different this time. Approving. Amazed. Lady Pemberton actually looked impressed. The Morrison sisters appeared genuinely happy for her. Even Lord Carlisle, who'd been grudgingly invited, was smiling. And at the back, half hidden behind a column, Catherine Walsh, watching with tears in her eyes and something that looked like regret. Lillian looked at her, nodded once, then turned back to the altar, to Rowan, to the future, to the choice she was making. Her father placed her hand in Rowan's and stepped back. "You came," Rowan whispered. "I came." She smiled. "Did you doubt me?" Not for a second. The ceremony was simple, traditional. But when they got to the vows, Rowan stopped the priest. "I want to add something. He turned to face her fully, both hands holding hers. Lillian Hawke, you're the bravest person I've ever met. You turned humiliation into strength, survival into art, pain into purpose. You rebuilt yourself into something so extraordinary that people will be studying your methods for generations. His voice was steady. Sure. I'm not promising I'll never make mistakes. I'll probably frustrate you daily. But I promise I'll show up every argument, every challenge, every moment you're afraid I'll run. I'll be right there, choosing you, choosing us, choosing this. Her throat felt tight. That's a lot of promises. I have a lot of time to keep them. He squeezed her hands. Your turn. Lillian took a breath, looked at this man who'd seen her at her worst and stayed anyway, who'd defended her to shareholders and believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself, who'd given her time and space and chosen her anyway. Rowan Blackridge, you saw me when I was invisible, believed in me when everyone else saw a scandal. You gave me room to be difficult and sharp and completely myself without asking me to soften for your comfort. She felt tears start and didn't bother hiding them. I'm not promising I won't be afraid sometimes. I probably will be. But I promise I won't run. Won't let fear make my decisions. Won't hide from this just because it's terrifying. You're worth the risk. We're worth the risk. The priest cleared his throat. Shall I continue? Please, they said together. The rest passed in a blur, rings exchanged, vows completed. The priest's declaration that they were married. And then Rowan was kissing her, and the chapel erupted in applause, and Lillian was laughing against his mouth, because this was so much better than anything she could have imagined standing here 2 years ago. They walked out together, hand in hand, into autumn sunshine that felt like absolution. At the bottom of the chapel steps, a carriage waited. But before they could reach it, Rowan stopped. One more thing. He pulled something from his pocket, a small box wrapped in burgundy silk. Wedding gift. We said no gifts. Open it. Inside was a brass plate, engraved with neat letters. Lillian Blackridge, Duchess of Blackridge, estate management consultant. For your office door, he explained, in case anyone forgets exactly who they're dealing with. She stared at it, throat tight. It's perfect. You're perfect. He kissed her forehead. My fierce, terrifying, absolutely perfect Duchess. I'm not perfect. I'm just yourself, which is better. He pulled her toward the carriage. Come on. We have a reception to survive and then a lifetime to figure out the rest. The reception was held at Blackridge Hall, in gardens that Lillian had helped redesign during her first months there. Her mother had cried through the entire ceremony. Her father had given a speech about stubborn daughters and the men brave enough to love them. Margaret Thorne had attended and immediately started networking with the other guests about potential consulting contracts. Late in the evening, as the party wound down and guests began departing, Lillian found herself alone on the terrace. The estate stretched out below, acres of land she'd helped manage, contracts she'd renegotiated, reforms she'd implemented, evidence of everything she'd built. There you are. Rowan appeared beside her, loosening his collar. People are asking for the bride. Let them ask. I needed a moment. He moved behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? That girl at the altar, the one who thought her life was ending. She leaned back into his warmth. She had no idea what was actually beginning. Would you tell her, if you could go back? Lillian considered it. The pain, the humiliation, the 2 years of rebuilding herself into someone stronger. No, she said finally. She needed to go through it, needed to break and rebuild and learn she could survive anything. Otherwise, she never would have become this, never would have been brave enough for you. I would have waited, however long it took. I know, but I wouldn't have been ready. She turned in his arms. Everything that happened, even the terrible parts, they led here. To this. To us. I can't regret that. Not even Thomas? Especially not Thomas. He was weak and I deserved better. The universe gave me better. She kissed him. It gave me you. The future stretched ahead of them, messy and uncertain and full of challenges that would test them both. more consulting contracts, more shareholders to convince, more people who judged their unconventional partnership. But they'd face it together. Two broken people who'd learned to trust again, who'd chosen each other despite every reason not to, who'd turned humiliation and pain into something that looked a lot like hope. "I love you," Lillian said against his mouth. "I love you too." His arms tightened around her. "My impossible, extraordinary Duchess." They stood there on the terrace as the sun set over Black Ridge, wrapped around each other, and Lillian felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Complete. Not because she'd found someone to complete her, she'd always been whole on her own, but because she'd found someone who saw that wholeness and chose to stand beside it, who made her stronger not by fixing her broken pieces, but by celebrating the way she'd forged them into armor. Someone who didn't run. The girl at the altar was gone. In her place was the Duchess of Blackridge, consultant, reformer, the woman who'd revolutionized estate management across England, the woman who'd turned her worst day into her greatest strength, the woman who'd rewritten her story on her own terms. And in the chapel that had once witnessed her destruction, she'd married the man who'd helped her build something better, something real, something that was entirely, completely hers. The battlefield had changed, the war was won, and Lillian Blackridge, formerly Hawke, abandoned bride, formidable estate manager, beloved Duchess, stood victorious in the ruins of her old life, holding tight to the future she'd fought so hard to claim.